Gwinnett County Public Schools has a history of inequality and underfunding certain schools and students based upon race. As the county browns, the resources shift.
I think Gwinnett County says that they want to create world-class students, but I don't think that the goal in which they have in mind is the right goal.
I absolutely intend and am pushing my children to attend college and graduate college.
I don't feel like my children are being prepared for post-secondary education.
And in fact, I think it's the opposite. I think they are oftentimes being penalized for their personality and for the things that they bring to the table. GCPS is not really equipped to understand and handle children who don't fit inside the norm, particularly my oldest child. He is a personality, he's a very kinesthetic, hands-on learner, and that doesn't work well within a traditional school setting. And so we've seen that challenge with GCPS since he's been in about 4th or 5th grade.
I would say my schoolwork didn't really push to challenge me to think deeper or more critically about anything. In fact, I think it did the opposite to kind of keep me in this mentality of thinking in a limited way. I think that there could have been a better distribution of how Meadow Creek prioritized things in order to provide services for students so they can kind of be the best student they can be, instead of, for example, being the best athlete they can be.
I really believe that a lot of times, because they're being engaged by teachers that are not ready themselves, that are not aware of how big the world is, they're being cut short of what they're capable of.
Elementary school, they don't acknowledge, Black History Month, and or in any of the schools, there's no acknowledgement of Hispanic Heritage Month or Black History Month or Women's History Month. There is, I really feel a direct, a concerted effort to suppress some of the cultural aspects of their personality and their lives in GCPS. So no, I don't feel that they are culturally supported within the school system at all.
And so there is a lot that gets lost in translation as it relates to the student. And then everything is moving so fast.
A lot of the classes felt like we just went from one thing to the next thing, and there wasn't a review to link them together.
One of the things that shocked me once was getting an email from a teacher that said that in order for Santiago to succeed in the class, I either needed to hire a tutor, college educated tutor, because she didn't have the time to help with every single question Santiago had in regards to the class, with it also being that he was an English learner. And it really threw me off because Santiago is actually learning Spanish and his first language is English. And I think it was assumption to the fact that his last name is Ruiz.
I definitely felt very just oddly disconnected from my courses and my teachers that only cared about me doing well in their subject matters, especially senior year where you're kind of trying to discover what it is you want to study going into college.
But in order for a child who doesn't feel like he can ask a question and get the teacher engaged to walk them through the problem, you know there's a problem with that teacher and not that child. Because the child is learning from your adult behavior.
Like if I were to ask my children about anything that they learned last year, they probably couldn't tell me. And it's because they're even getting into this systemized structure of teaching, which is, can get what you need right now, and then let that go so we can put the new stuff in, and then let that go so they're not really retaining anything.
A lot of teachers at Meadow Creek, and this is something I've literally heard like with my ears, say things along the lines of like, I'm only here because I like want to move to a better school. And a lot of times, like a lot of my teachers that I can remember from Meadow Creek have like taught that year, and then next year have moved to teaching at like Peachtree Ridge or like Brookwood or something like that. And so a lot of teachers see Meadow Creek as like this like middle gray area where they're just there, they're teaching there because they simply want to move somewhere else.
But I think a lot of the times the teachers did not have the attitude to engage in a way where they will seem that they cared.
When you go to a high school where there are so like limited resources, you go to college with the same mentality, and then you realize one day, like so far into your education, that you have not been utilizing like your education to its fullest capacity, and that can feel really like daunting.
I even have friends who are college professors, and they have told me that these kids that are coming in college are not prepared, and they don't even know how to write.
And so they tried to suspend them for 8 days for fighting. We blew the roof off, and and so that came back down to 2 days for rough housing that could cause endangerment or something. I can't remember the exact term, but
behavior.
It's very traumatic and disappointing that these kids are acting silly, yes, but to classify it as fighting as a violent offense when I was fortunate that I was able to reach out to Gwinnett Stop and learn different avenues that we can take and how we could advocate for him, and being able to dissect the student the student handbook and the disciplinary process, and how we could really push back on the principal who wanted to suspend him for 8 days for fighting when he wasn't fighting, it was very stressful. It's very traumatic. The incident did negatively impact my son and how he feels about school and the education process. And he's always saying, I have to, make sure I don't sneeze too hard, or, I'll get in trouble. Or he feels very self-conscious and anxious. I think that's the word. Anxious in terms of how he is perceived compared to his peers. We've had several racially charged incidents at the school. Children have been dropping N-bombs very loudly, heard by coaches and refs and teachers and everybody, and nothing happens. And so that puts the it's clear that students of color, their mental well-being is not considered important. When you have students dropping N-bombs and using racially charged language, and nothing happens. But the other student, who's jumping off the bench is ready to be suspended for 8 days. So it's definitely something that weighs on him heavily.
Several organizations do work with our schools to prevent this specific pipeline. For example, even in my own county, Gwinnett County, we have the Gwinnett Parents Coalition to Dismantle the School-to-Prison Pipeline, Gwinnett Stop for short.
In order to begin to move to real equity for all, we must take some steps. Fund schools based upon need. Invest in professional development for staff, particularly cultural competency training. Deepen the curriculum. Apply a racial lens to access and equity. Incentivize more experienced staff to teach in high-need schools. Invest in social emotional learning.